Nike makes some great top-end football boots, but most players aren't looking to spend $250 on a new pair. But thankfully, with all of the second and third tier takedown models available, you don't have to. So in this video, we're gonna be looking at some of the best boots that Nike has to offer around the $100 price point or less. So if you're on a budget and you're just looking for something decently comfortable that will help you perform on the pitch, you should find a good option here. And then of course, at the end of the video, if you're interested in picking up any of the boots we discuss, you can find links to them on sale with discount codes in the description below. Starting things off, we have one of my favorite offerings from Nike overall, and that's gonna be the Premier 3. Now, technically, the full retail price for the Nike Premier 3s is gonna be $120, but depending on the colorway you're looking at, you can often find them on sale between that $90 to $100 range. And for that price, you're actually getting a surprising amount for your money. I mean, this is gonna be a full kangaroo leather football boot, and at this point in time, it's actually the only leather football boot that Nike sells since they discontinued leather versions of the Tiempo. And so this is definitely a pretty good deal because with most other brands, you're usually not gonna start to see kangaroo leather until about the $150 to $160 price point. And then obviously looks are subjective, but in my opinion, just the overall aesthetic of this boot from Nike is definitely one of my favorites. I think it manages to pull off a retro look while still being modern at the same time. These are a pair I picked up in the platinum colorway a few years ago, and I love these gold accents that they have, and they also have some really cool embroidered patterns in the sole plate as well. I think all of the major brands have their take on a classic leather football boot, and the Premier is going to be Nike's entry. And generally, I wouldn't say that Nikes are going to be the best brand for wide-footed players, but of all of the models that they have available, I would still say that the Premier 3 is probably the widest that you can get, especially towards the toe box. And because it does have this soft kangaroo leather upper all throughout the boot, the toe box is going to stretch after you wear the boots for a few weeks and months. For reference, I got these in my standard size 10.5 US, and when I first got them, my toes were pretty much all the way to the end, maybe just with a few millimeters of space or so, but after playing in them a few days per week for about 2 months on end, they definitely stretched out a little bit more, especially towards the front of the boot. Now, compared to more expensive leather football boots on the market, I did notice that the stitching on the Premier isn't quite as durable as some competitors that are around that $150 to $200 price point. If you wear these boots a lot, you might notice some tears along the stitching, especially towards the side of the boot, more likely on the dominant side where you're going to be striking the ball a lot. But again, for that $100 price point, it's definitely still meeting my expectations for build quality, and it's still one of my favorite boots from Nike. And my final note on the Premier 3 is that I like that there just aren't other variations you can get in this boot. There's no takedown model, there's no second, third tier, or fourth tier variation. There's no different sole plates you can get that are MG, AG, or soft ground. It's just one boot with one design and a lot of different cool colorways you can choose from. Next up, we're taking a look at another classic series from Nike, and that's gonna be the Tiempo. And if you are shopping around that $100 price point, the two models that you might be considering are gonna be the Legend 10 Pro and then the Legend 10 Academy. The Pro being the second tier takedown, and then the Academy being the third tier takedown. Starting with the Legend 10 Academy, since this is the third tier takedown, it's gonna have a full retail price of around $85, but since the Legend 10 has been on sale for I think close to a full year now, you can actually find these boots heavily discounted, and usually you can pick up a pair of the Academies between 60 or 70 bucks. Now, being that this is a third tier takedown and it's pretty affordable, there are some giveaways about its price when you look at the design. For example, the upper, especially towards the heel area, is going to be a little bit chunkier than the more premium versions, and instead of that soft elasticated fly knit collar that you get on the Elite and Pro version, you're just going to have a standard tongue. But in terms of some of the main performance metrics that I look for when trying on a pair of boots like comfort and lockdown, the Legend 10 Academy is still going to hit all of those marks. And believe me, lockdown and comfort are really important when you get into this price point because a lot of boots in that $50, $60, $70 price range just don't deliver on them at all. The synthetic leather upper that you get on the Academy is still going to be pretty soft. It's a variation of their new Fly Touch material. And while, as I mentioned, the boots are a little bit chunkier around the ankle and heel area, you are still going to get a lot of sensitivity from that upper, and it's not too thick by any means towards the front of the boot. And for reference, in the Tiempos, I also normally go true to size, and I've never had any issue. But if you're interested in the Tiempo line and you've got a few more dollars to spend, I would actually recommend that you take a look at the Legend 10 Pro. Now, you can get the Legend 10 Pro in the standard version or the Emerald variation. Essentially, the Emerald version just has this cool teal color and a new diamond pattern on the upper. I went with the Emerald version just because I really like the look of it. Now, on its release, the Tiempo Legend 10 Pro was actually listing for $150, and that is a little bit steep for a second tier takedown boot. However, since the boot has been out for several months on end, like I mentioned, you can find the Legend 10 Pro for close to $110 to $120 depending on the colorway. And while there are a lot of great deals to be had throughout Nike's lineup, if I were to choose one football boot from Nike that was a great value play and one of the best options you could choose, it would probably be the Legend 10 Pro. Just because usually when you go get a second tier takedown, whether it be from Nike, Adidas, or Puma, you can usually find at least one feature that's a little bit different between the takedown model and the most expensive version, because after all, there has to be something that actually makes that $100 price point. But when it comes to the Tiempo Legend 10, I've tried the premium elite version that goes for around $230, and I've tried the pro version that's $100 cheaper than that, and I cannot find any difference between the design or the feel of these boots. You're gonna get a really crisp and thin fly touch upper, and then most importantly, you're gonna get a fly knit collar that wraps all the way around your ankle and runs underneath the lacing system. Now, pretty much every brand and multiple models on the market have a variation of this stretchy, elasticated material that goes around your ankle. It's pretty much what you hear called a sock boot, but just the implementation of that fly knit throughout the Tiempos is probably my personal favorite on a football boot. The material is stretchy enough to give you a nice accommodating fit, but it's still tight enough to make sure your feet are locked down in the boots. And I was actually pretty skeptical when the Tiempo was first released, because this is the first model in its history that doesn't have any leather. And being a big fan of leather football boots, I thought that this was gonna lead to kind of a downgrade in terms of the touch, feel, and overall sensation that you got from the boots. And honestly, the fly touch feels great, and I think it does a surprisingly good job at imitating the sensation that you would get from natural calf leather. The silhouette of the boot appears to have a somewhat average to slightly narrower width, but I have pretty wide feet and these accommodated me just fine. If you do feel personally that you have wider feet than the norm, then the Premier 3 might be a slightly better option, or you might want to check out wider boots from brands like New Balance. Now, moving on from the Tiempo, we're going to be talking about a relatively new entry to the Nike lineup, and that's going to be the Phantom GX2. Now, as far as more budget options for the Phantom, you're going to be looking at the Pro version, the Academy, and then the Club in that order. Now, when I reviewed the premium elite version of the Phantom GX2 several months ago, there were a lot of things that I liked about those boots, but believe it or not, there was actually a few features of the affordable versions that actually made them stand out more in my opinion. And the first variation that I wanted to mention is the version I'm holding right here, and that's the GX2 Pro with the artificial grass sole plate configuration. And when the GX2 Pro is on sale, you can usually find a pair, once again, depending on the colorway, for around $120 to $130. And to start things off, I'm just so happy that Nike has made artificial grass variations of their boots a lot more attainable and easy to find. And one of the reasons I'm so happy about that is because the sole plate that was released with the elite versions on firm ground when they first came out is that Cyclone 360 pattern that you see. For me, it's just a little bit too aggressive, especially for use on artificial grass, which I usually play on most of the time. If you pick up the AG variation, it's gonna have these shorter, rounder conical studs that are gonna allow for a lot more free rotation on the pitch, and you're just gonna have a lower likelihood of the studs getting caught in the ground when you're turning or accelerating. Now, one big feature that's going to be missing from the Pro version and all of the takedown versions that you do get with the Elite version is going to be the grip knit coating on the upper. And that's pretty surprising because that's actually one of the main selling points that Nike has for the new Phantom. And if you haven't felt the premium versions with that grip knit coating, it is pretty cool, and I did enjoy the novelty of playing with them in my full review. And if you are looking for a football boot that has the absolute stickiest upper that you can get on the entire market, then yeah, you probably would be looking at spending that $240 to $250 on the Elite version. But if I'm being completely honest, I'm actually not the biggest fan of having a super sticky upper on my football boots. Sometimes when they're fresh out of the box, I just feel like the ball can get really easily stuck under your feet when you're dribbling, and sometimes I like a slightly more matte coating that you have on this Pro version. It just makes it a little bit easier to get touches off of your feet. And that being said, on this Pro version, even though you don't have that really sticky grip knit coating, you're still going to have these textured elements on the side of the boot that are going to help give you a little bit more grip on your shots and your long balls. And other than missing that grip knit coating throughout the upper, pretty much all of the other features and build quality of the Pro version is going to be the exact same as the Elite variation. So if you want the same look, fit, and feel of the Phantoms and you're not too bothered about missing out on the grip knit, the Pros are a great way to go. As far as width and sizing are concerned, I did get these in my standard 10.5 US. I would say the width is actually pretty impressive through the midfoot on the Phantoms, but they do taper a decent amount towards the toe box. So if your feet do happen to be a little bit wider towards that toe box area, they might not be the best option for you. But a couple months ago, I actually wanted to review an even cheaper version of the new Nike Phantom, and I saw that the academies were going for around $80 to $90, but I felt I could go even cheaper than that, so I looked at the 4th tier takedown, which are the club versions, and I found those for just $45. And at that price of $45, the Nike Phantom GX2 Club are actually the cheapest Nikes I have ever tried on. And when these boots first came in through the mail, my expectations were pretty much on the floor, because I've tried on some football boots that were less than $50 that were pretty much unplayable. And to be fair, maybe it was because my expectations were so low, but almost everything about these boots completely exceeded my expectations. Similar to the Academy models, the upper, especially around the ankle and heel area, was a little bit on the chunkier side. But I found that the upper throughout the midfoot and the toe box was actually a little bit thinner and softer than I expected it to be. And one thing that's very common with these club and academy versions is that on the club versions of the Phantoms, you're actually going to have an open lacing system with a traditional tongue instead of the one-piece upper design that you have here on the Pros. And while that lacing system may feel a little bit on the cheaper side, because it's so open, it actually is going to give you a slightly wider fit. And since I consider the Phantoms to be a relatively narrow boot, I actually enjoyed the fit of that club variation just because I felt like I had a little bit more space in the boots. The sole plate on the clubs was also pretty impressive as well. It ships with a standard MG variation, which stands for multi-ground. It's basically just a combination of some conical studs and really short bladed studs, but I found it was really good for use on both firm ground and artificial grass. Now, it hardly has any design elements that make it similar to the more expensive Pro and Elite version, but at the end of the day, it's still a solid football boot that's pretty comfortable, gonna give you great lockdown and good traction on the pitch. So if you're just looking for a bare bones, affordable football boot under that $50 price point, the GX2 Club is gonna be a decent option. And finally, we're gonna round out our list with one of the most popular boots in Nike's lineup, and that's gonna be the Vapor 16 Academy. Now, the premium version of the Vapor 16 is gonna retail for $260, and since this is a pretty new football boot, you probably won't see that price come down for another couple weeks. And even the 2nd tier Pro version is gonna retail for $160, which in my opinion is a pretty premium price point. So if you're looking to pick up a new pair of Vapors under $100, it leaves you with one main option, and that's the new Vapor 16 Academy, which retails for a price of $90. Now, I was really impressed with the Vapor 15 Academy that released last year, and so my expectations were high with this new model, and honestly, they didn't disappoint. Despite being a 3rd tier takedown, the Nike Skin upper that you get on the new Vapor 16s is actually going to be really thin. Now, it's not going to be quite as soft as the Fly Touch material you get on the Tiempos, but that's not quite the sensation Nike's going for here. It's still really thin, and it's going to give you a very sensitive touch on the ball. And another upgrade that Nike made with this new Academy model is they change out their heel liner. This is going to be a really soft suede material, almost like a microfiber. Then, just like the other Academy models we've discussed, you're going to have a freeform open tongue towards the top of the ankle area here, and that tongue actually attaches to the upper towards the base of the lacing system. And then the sole plate, more or less, is pretty much exactly the same as what you get on the more premium versions. The only difference is that there's going to be a couple conical studs introduced towards the forefoot on this one. You're even going to get an air zoom unit in the heel, which I kind of think is a gimmick, but it's still pretty nice that they included it on this cheaper version. Now, in terms of fit, the Vapor 16s are going to be better for those who have average to slightly narrower foot shapes. Because at the end of the day, keep in mind that Mercurials have generally been a pretty snug fitting football boot. And because they do run really snug, if you want a close fit, I would recommend going true to size. But if you're a player that wants to have a little bit of extra room, especially towards the front of the boots, I'd maybe recommend going up a half size. And if you want the look and feel of the new Vapor series, but you're shopping on a budget, the Academy version is definitely what I would go with. The heel and ankle area is really soft, you get a clean and responsive touch on the ball, and you get plenty of lockdown and traction. But to let you in on a secret, if you want an even better deal, I would actually check online to see if you can find the Vapor 15 Academy, because right now that boot is going to be selling between $50 and $60. It's also an amazing football boot, and really there aren't too many design changes between that version released last year and then this new one from a month ago. And guys, that is going to do it for this video. Please let me know in the comments if you've gotten to try on any of these boots and which one was your favorite. Also, I'm doing a subscriber only giveaway for a new pair of football boots. All you got to do to enter is be subscribed to the channel and fill out the link in the description below. Thank you guys for watching. Leave a like if you've enjoyed, and I will see you on the next video.